Great words, great words. You know, it's we're all in this together. There's a lot going on in here, and there is hope, and I know God's going to help us through this. So I applaud you all for being here today. You're taking the first step. You're getting yourselves educated, and that's so important. There's a lot of stuff going on out there. There's a lot of unscrupulous people out there who would want to prey on other people's misfortune. So it's important to get educated and find out what's real, what's myth. So that's our goal today. If I haven't introduced myself already, I am Frank Lavra. Me and my wife and Jacob, we've been going to St. Luke's here for quite a long time, and now Hope Spring is our church. So we live right down the street over here off 535. We live in the community. We know what's going on in this community because we're part of it. Like Bill, we purchased a home in 2005. If I was to sell it today, it'd be a significant loss for us. And at this point, fortunately for us, we're not going anywhere. We look at it now as our home. It's not an investment. It's a home for us. If it was an investment, it's probably the worst investment I ever made. So at this point, it's about moving forward. What we have today, the resource tables out here is once we go to our breakout sessions, we're going to have a legal discussion over here, legal questions and answers, credit consumer counseling back here. I'll be talking about some of the real estate aspects, any real estate questions you might have, and then Caroline will be talking about the financial solutions, loan modifications and things like that. So as we go through this, this all kind of makes sense. If I could ask you, let's kind of hold our questions towards the breakout session. We've got 4 presenters here, and if we can, I think a lot of the questions you're probably swimming in your head right now, hopefully we'll answer. If we don't answer them, write them down, save them for the breakout session. Then you're going to be able to get a much more pointed one-on-one discussion with one of our experts. Our exhibit tables out here, we've got consumer credit counseling, Unity reverse mortgages, which is a great option, maybe a great option for our seniors, 62 and older. Share ministry, which is a wholesale food ministry for people who are truly struggling. This is an option. It's a great way to eat, to get food. It's important. We've heard the question. I hear this a lot in my business. Frank, do I make a house payment or do I put groceries on the table? Well, it's pretty simple. You got to feed your family. And then we've got to go and figure out what we do with the house in that situation. A lot of other community resources out there, so please take advantage of that. Walk through those tables, grab whatever you need. Come to see one of us if you have a question on any of these things. So the other thing too, I don't know if all you guys saw the gold cards that we had up at the front. This is some feedback that we would like from you. Likewise, we are going to be doing follow-up workshops. So we've done this with an unemployment workshop that St. Luke's has been doing. We found out that from that initial workshop, we've had a lot of follow-up things, resume writing, interview process, job search, things like that, workshops that we're able to bring in experts from the community to help educate ourselves. So if there's a couple spaces in here for you to circle what you'd like to see us do next, or if you want more information, certainly fill those out, leave it on one of the back tables or towards the front. That'll help us find out what the needs of our communities are. So with no further ado then, let's go ahead and start. I'm going to talk to you about the real estate market. I am a professional realtor. I've been practicing in this area for 4 years. I know a lot about what goes on. We dealt with the short sales and the foreclosures, working with both sellers and buyers. So I'm going to show you some of my hopefully expert information that's going to help you understand what's been going on. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about what's happened with the real estate market and go to our first slide here. So one thing to remember about real estate, you always hear it local, local, local. Every community is different. There's a lot of information out there about what's happening at a national level, what's happening in the state of Florida. But what's really important is what's going on really in your neighborhood. What we're going to find is Belmere is going to be different than Orange Tree, and Orange Tree is going to be different than Summerport or Lakes of Windermere. So to really understand the value of your home, because really that's what's going to be at the crux of this whole problem, is what is your home worth today, and depending on what your equity position is, then the various options are going to be available to you. So one of the things we do, and I do every day, is analyze data in kind of an occupational hazard of being in engineering for 20 years. I do a lot of charts and graphs, so I apologize straight up front. If I bore you with numbers and charts, bear with me. Hopefully there's some good information. You'll get through it. But one of the things, we took a community over in the Dr. Phillips area, Cypress Landing, and we did a 10-year study on it. I would love to have gone back further, but the data just isn't available on our MLS system. But if we go back 10 years, we see where homes were maybe selling at $100 a square foot. We normalize to dollars per square foot because if you've got a 3,000 square foot home that's selling for $300,000 and a 2,000 square foot home that's selling for $200,000, you can't compare sale price. What you have to do is compare what is the dollar per square foot. So that helps us normalize the data and kind of smooth things out. So as we look at this, we'll see that we started at $100 per square foot. You'll see some variances in here between a high and a low dollar per square foot. A lot of that has to do with the features and amenities, the location of the home, the size of it. Does it have a pool? Does it have a 3-car garage? Does it back up to a road? Is it on a pond? These sorts of things will change the values of a home. You know, so you will see some noise in this chart. It's not a smooth chart, but you can see what the average is doing. Well, what we see, historic appreciation for real estate is 3 to 5% a year. That's healthy. That's a good, healthy market. If you can get 5% a year in a real estate investment, that's considered good. And historically, that goes back, 20, 30, 40 years if you look at the charts. What we see happen, and that's pretty much what was happening here until about 2004, then we get into our real estate bubble. And we go from $120 a square foot to over $200 a square foot very, very quickly. That type of return is probably 30%, 35% year over year for a couple of years. Well, we hit our peak and prices start to drop. And of course, everyone's aware of what's happened with our financial crisis, what's gone on with the banks and whatnot. The housing is pretty much at the center of that as the housing market collapsed, as the credit market collapsed. It's just kind of rippled down to everything else. So if we look at it, taking this chart, at the very end here, which is probably in August of 2009, we're probably down, probably at least 40%, from where our peaks were. So, had you bought in here and trying to sell down in here, of course, you're going to be upside down. And therein lies the problem that makes it difficult in doing real estate. If we go on to the next slide, so this is just one neighborhood. And what we're going to see is every neighborhood's different. If we go on to the next slide, this is another community up in Ocoee, Windermere border, Cross Creek. And again, some historic data going back to 1999. Pretty flat, almost maybe a negative kind of movement here for a couple of years. Step up, I can't explain why there was a step up. Maybe a new community came online close by, kind of drove prices up, but it's very clear. Again, the data is, historic data is pretty clear. We understand what has happened, maybe not why. But then we see the big increase from 2003, going from $90 a square foot to $190 again. It doubled. We see a double in just a matter of a couple of years. Unfortunately, what goes up sometimes must come back down. And in this particular chart, towards the end of 2008, we see that we're back to maybe a 2004 pricing level. And the other thing to note here is we don't see anything plateauing, so maybe it's still moving down. If we go on to the next slide, this is Orange Tree, right across the street from Dr. Phillips area, the Restaurant Rose community. And again, we're looking at historic performance, pretty consistent growth, and then of course we spike. And again, we see these differences here might be because pond front versus something, golf course, again, the features of the home. But again, $200 a square foot seems to be the peak, and then we drop down now maybe to $130 a square foot. Maybe a little flattening out here. It's hard to say. Again, we won't know until time passes and we can look at the historic data. If we go on to the next slide, Lakes of Windermere. Now this is a community actually right here in our area. We go right down 535 and Overstreet. And this is a brand new community that came online in 2003 and continued to be built through 2006. So as the new homes are being built, the new home prices are going up, as are the resale prices, and going from $100 a square foot to maybe $180 a square foot. And then, of course, the quick slide down. The thing about this slide that I would note is maybe, since early 2009, maybe we're seeing a plateau here. Maybe we're seeing where prices have kind of reached a floor. The thing to note on this floor is below even what they first started building that community out. And you'll see this in a couple other communities too. What happens now, one of the things, the dynamics that's happening, a lot of foreclosures are coming onto the market. Maybe 40 or 50% of the homes that were purchased in 2004, 5, 6 were bought by investors. Those homes are now vacant. Those homes are now being foreclosed on and coming back to the market. The banks, their strategy today, if they look at something like this at maybe $80, $85 a square foot, they'll bring the home on the market at $70 a square foot and create a feeding frenzy. And it's quick. I mean, in a matter of a couple days, they'll have 4 or 5 offers on the home. It will get bid up to about $85 a square foot. So it's kind of a little bit of a game. The banks and the lenders are doing this because they don't want to hold on to this inventory any longer. They just want to get it sold quickly. So that's kind of what the strategy is. So what happens then is we're starting to see this plateauing effect, and we certainly see it in this community and a couple other communities. Is this the bottom? I don't know. I wish I had a crystal ball. I wish I could say, yep, this is the bottom, and starting tomorrow we're going to see appreciation. Experts don't think it is the bottom. It may be a bottom, and maybe we're going to be at this long plateau for a while. One of the things we see is there's a lot of shadow inventory, a lot of foreclosed homes out there that have not come to the market yet. And that's what's really frustrating for us as practitioners in this business. We'd love to see us hit the bottom, and then we know, okay, put everything on the market, let the prices hit their bottom, and then we know, okay, we're done. And now we've got this slow growth moving forward. That's not happening. What's happening is they're bringing them on, and maybe it has something to do with the way they're working their books quarter to quarter, and maybe they're only going to take so much loss this quarter and so much loss next quarter. I don't know why this is happening, but it is happening. So the thought is we probably will be in a sustained period of maybe stabilization. Hopefully we stabilize. Hopefully we don't go down any further. If we go to the next slide, we'll see this actually is pretty clear too. Summerport is another community just, a stone's throw away from here. Again, started in 2003. Prices jumped up very, very quickly, from $90 a square foot to, 190, 180 maybe is our average, 170 in here, and then we've came down. A lot of activity, a lot of homes have sold in 2009, and so we have this data point of what maybe appears. We certainly aren't dropping at this rate we were here, so maybe we're flattening out. Hopefully that's our bottom. Don't know that it's going to be. Marion, go to the next slide, please. I'm not sure what okay, and then Belmere is another community up here in Windermere. Same story, $90 a square foot, up to $200 a square foot. We've come back down. Now, we don't see a lot of sales activity going on in that particular community right now, so it's hard to really get a read on what's happening. Are we at a bottom? Are we continuing to drop? It's hard to say. The next slide, I think we're going to show, okay, thank you. At this point, so are we at the bottom? We don't know. What's the recovery going to look like once we do hit that bottom? If we get 3 to 5% appreciation per year, now we're back down to a historic good real estate market. So are we going to be in a good real estate market once we hit bottom? Probably not going to get into it right away. It's probably going to take a while before we start seeing appreciation. We've got a lot of inventory in Florida, and it's Florida, California, Nevada, Arizona, the 4 states that are the worst on it. So we are dealing with it. They're not dealing with this in Kansas or Nebraska like we are here. So when you see national numbers out there, and you see a lot of reports on the national news, what's going on nationally, again, it's got to be tempered. What's going on in Florida? What's going on in Windermere or Ocoee? What's going on in your community? Really, those are the numbers that are most important to you. To consider that we've seen a 50% drop in value. If a home has gone from $200 a square foot to $100 a square foot, we've lost 50% of the value. That's bad. But what's even worse is to get back up to that $200 a square foot, you've got to get 100% appreciation. You have to double. And from an investment standpoint, if you can find an investment that doubles in any reasonable amount of time, you've got yourself a great investment. Historically, if you had a 10% return, it would take you 7 years to double your investment. If you had a 7% return, it would take you 10 years. If you're at 3 or 5%, it's going to take you much longer than 10 years. It might be 15 years, it may be 20 years. In fact, that's what the next slide is going to show us here. What we did, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. What we did is the very first slide I showed you was Cypress Landing, and we saw what the appreciation did. It went from $100 a square foot to $200 a square foot to maybe $130 a square foot. We put together a model, and unfortunately we can't read these dates out here. But what we did is we said, okay, let's say we're going to be at a flat point for about a year or so. Maybe we stay flat at $130 a square foot. And then for the next year, we grow at 1.5% a year. And then from there, we go 3% a year, year over year, to get back to that $200 a square foot. This date out here, 2023. 2023. It's a long time. And that's assuming that we've got 3% year over year. No bumps, no hiccups, nothing. We're just every year, year after year, we go up 3% a year. If we change this to 5%, this 2023 draws into like 2019. That's still, 10 years away. So one of the things I see a lot, I know Charlie and Carol Ann see a lot in their business, a lot of people think, you know what, I'm in trouble right now today. But you know what, I'm going to wait until next year. I'm going to put my home on the market next year. It's going to be a lot better. Next year, we're probably, again, no one knows, but next year we're probably going to be here. We're going to be at the same point if we're lucky. Hopefully we don't continue to go down. 3, 4, 5 years from now, maybe we're here. We're still painfully short of where we need to go. So that's the hard, cold reality of it. So again, I said earlier, I bought a home right here in 2005. I'm down here. If I look at it from an investment standpoint, it's the worst investment I've made. Fortunately for us, it was our home, and we're solvent. We don't need to go anywhere, and we have our roots. I just pray that continues. One of the things we do see when working with people who are in this situation is to get past this point here and understand that, okay, I'm not going to be able to turn this thing around overnight. What are my options? So if we go to the next slide, what we found is the depressed housing market has created two categories of people. Those who have the financial ability to continue to make a mortgage. Maybe it's, and it has to be 31 to 38% of your gross income is what the banks are going to be looking at for a reasonable mortgage. And then there are going to be those homeowners who don't have the ability to make any kind of mortgage payment. Maybe they've lost a job, they've had a problem with an illness, an accident, whatnot. So when that happens, their situation is certainly far more dire. And another cause of that might be the adjustable rate mortgages. A lot of people had adjustable rate mortgages that did reset, and now they simply can't afford the mortgage. So if we go to the next slide, so if we break up, again, looking at these two different groups of people, we'll see that for those who do have the ability to make a mortgage payment, there are going to be some different options. I think my pen's working here. The refinance, repayment, loan modification, reverse mortgage, HUD partial payment, and loan forbearance. Now, Carol Ann Licht is going to talk in depth about some of those options. The key to any of these solutions, of course, is there are going to be qualifying guidelines, and there are going to be consequences for them. None of this is going to be pain-free. It's going to affect, more likely it's going to affect your credit in one way or another and whatnot. Charlie Price is an attorney who's been involved with this type of stuff for quite a long time, and has got a great level of expertise. We'll be speaking to the legal issues that I call legal issues: deed in lieu, short sale, foreclosure, and bankruptcy. And some of these might be good options too. What's important here, and again, our whole goal here today is to educate you folks and understand what's the pros and cons, what are my options, and what can we do. Certainly, your goal should be then to embrace that. Ask the questions that you need to understand. When we get into the breakout sessions, Carol Ann will talk with regards to some of the financial issues. Charlie will talk to the legal issues, consumer credit counseling. If you need help understanding how do I work through my budget, how do I establish a budget, they'll be back here. And then likewise, I'll be back here in this portion of the room addressing real estate questions you might have. Frank, what's the value of my home? Because really that's important. Frank, what are the details, when you go through a short sale? How do you guys do that? Those are, those are my area of expertise. So really, that kind of sets us up to our next presenter. Charlie's actually going to be talking next with regards to the legal issues. He and Carol Ann, there will be some overlap in their material. If you look in your pamphlets, we're a little bit out of order. I think the legal issues might be the third group of slides, and that's what Charlie will present to. So hopefully this all makes sense, and I know Charlie's going to have some great information for us here that's going to help us.